let me introduce Academy Award winner and a dear friend, one of the greatest filmmakers I know, Sofia Coppola. Sofia, thanks so much for letting me be part of this.
Thank you. Thank you for being here with me.
I've got to ask, what does it feel like to watch that clip from Lost in Translation again, given what your new movie is?
Yeah, I haven't seen that in so long. So it was touching to see. It just brought me back to that moment in time, and I really haven't watched it in a while. And to see Bill, yeah, looks younger, but he looks. It was sweet. Yeah, it brought me back, and of course, all my warm feelings for Bill and Scarlett in that moment. But yeah, I haven't watched that in a while, so it took me back. It was really sweet to see.
Yeah, because as I was watching, I found myself thinking, just hearing that Jesus and Mary chain, how do you pick the first song for your movie? Because that's such a signature. You think about Air of course from your first film, and then I guess I've been thinking about that Sleigh Bell song that starts off Bling Ring, and those songs really set the mood. And I wonder how you pick them and when you pick them.
Yeah, I was thinking. I mean, just watching that last clip, so much of it's that song. I love that song, and I remember traveling a lot in Tokyo and being on buses and vans from the airport and cars and listening to music and those moments you have after a late night or with new friends and listening to music and just that feeling it gives you. So that moment reminds me of that. And I don't know. I think I for that, but there was music I was listening to at that time, and my friend Brian Reitzel, who I worked on the music with, he made me a compilation called Tokyo Dream Pop and putting favorite songs that we listened to and other music. And so when I'm writing, I listen to music and like with Bling Ring and Sleigh Bells, I was listening to that song while I was working on this script. I had a mix that I was just listening to a lot then. And I thought that I was sort of writing the opening to that song. So a lot of times it helps me when I'm writing to listen to music that feels like the mood of what I'm.
So I guess I was wondering how much that informs that again, because I was thinking about how often there's kind of period songs. I mean, there's a lot of period stuff in Lost in Translation, and then given that Marie Antoinette is period, it starts off with Gang of Four, which is not only period, but very much about a social music movement in music too. And I wonder, again, those specific kinds of choices.
Yeah, I mean, for me, Marie Antoinette was so linked to the new romantic period in music, and when I was a teenager and wanting to give it a feeling of teenage spirit and rebelliousness, and so to have to anchor it in that kind of energy. So that was really one of the starting points of thinking about the whole mood, and then thinking about the fashion of that period and of the new romantic period and Vivienne Westwood and what was going on then. And so to have this kind of rebellious teen spirit in it, and so that was all in the early stages of what was exciting to me about approaching it in the beginning of writing it.
I guess not to give too much away, but talk about the moves that you used for music in the new film.
Yeah, I mean that was centered around this character that Bill plays. He's called Felix, and he's a kind of debonair man of the world, and capturing kind of the romance of old New York, of Bemelman's Bar, and they go to 21, and just kind of this other era that he's kind of the last link to. And so I was listening to Chet Baker and thinking of this kind of guy having a martini in uptown New York, and so that was what I was listening to. And then I asked Tamal, my husband's band Phoenix, to write some original music that could be Rashida's character's world, and something that they had to work together, not clash, but she's not in that same kind of world. So how to each character have their own kind of soundtrack and how they work together.
I guess, given how we both know Bill, one of the things I find myself thinking about in seeing this movie is, even though it's not him, clearly in a lot of ways it's sculpted to him, that he's an old school gentleman, that he's kind of a seducer, that he waits and waits and waits until he has to say the right thing. And this feels, not that the other piece wasn't shaped for him, but this really feels shaped for a lot of his specialties, a lot of his personality.
I think the thing about Bill that I put in the character, I think, is really how he loves life and how he just really is living in a way in the moment. And there's a scene where I wanted him just to smell this bouquet of roses while he's waiting for her. And I thought he's the kind of guy that smells the flowers. And so I asked him to, and then Bill like took his arms, like embraced and engulfed the flowers, like, which I would have never thought of. It was just so Bill. But I feel like that side of his personality, I wanted to have a little of that in the character of someone that just is really embracing life, and because she's kind of stuck in her life, and he helps kind of wake her up to the fun and the magic.
But also,
That spirit.
but I think you also get his patience in this. I mean, that he will wait and do what he wants to do and let the moment kind of find him rather than assault the moment.
Yeah, that's true. That is a rare quality that he has. I didn't think about that, but yeah, definitely.
Because I wonder what your first conversation with him was about this project.
I had a photo of us at the Marrakesh Film Festival at the bar in the Mamounia. I have it here. I can show you.
Yes.
He's holding a martini. I don't know if you can see it. That Mitch
Glazer.
That was the inspiration. I mean, I have that on my bulletin board when I was writing, because that's kind of the character, like him in a tuxedo with the martini, and of course he's not Felix at all, but he can be, you know, that as far as the sophisticated side. And I just told him I was writing something for him, and he and then we had a table reading with Rashida, and I think that's the first time he ever read it. It was the day after his Christmas party, and I think he, you know, we had to like wake him up to come. We did a table reading at the Carlisle, and it was just with Mitch Glazer, our friend and producer, and his wife Kelly Lynch, and Rashida, and an actor friend sat in for Marlon's character, and we just did a table reading, and then we talked about it with Rashida, and then that was it. And then he just showed up on set, and he was the character. We just talked about it at lunch, and he came up with the two of them were whistling, and he came up with this idea about teaching her to whistle, which I love, and it became a motif and metaphor, because it really is about her kind of getting her spirit back. And so I love that. But it really came out of just one conversation after a table reading, and then he showed up as the character, and you know, of course that's what you love, that he totally embodied that, everything about that character without having to talk about it very much.
I guess though, because this character reminds me that so often in your films, there are people who have an awareness of the effect they have on people. We go back to the Virgin Suicides and those boys talking about the way those young women go through that town. They're kind of like stars. And that idea of somebody being bigger than life and sort of radiating this presence that affects everybody in their kind of immediate field of vision is something you return to thematically.
Oh yeah, I didn't think about that. I don't know, I guess maybe growing up on the sidelines of a lot of excitement going on or something. I don't know. I mean, my dad is definitely a big character and charismatic, but so there's that connection. But yeah, I think I get, my mom is such an observer, so I feel like I have kind of a mix of being an observer and then being around a lot of action growing up and stuff, and kind of the way people can stand out and be seen.
No, because there's that sense too of both the observed and the observer in your movies. There's somebody who's watching, and in Marie Antoinette, she's kind of both. She's sort of trapped in being the observer and the victim of being observed. Yeah. And it's a really interesting thing because it also sort of helps, because these movies are so often about a really compressed period of time.
Yeah. I think it's more interesting to me just a little slice of a moment of a bigger story, and not trying to tell the whole story, but just looking at this moment, that there's some transition, or just a little slice of life.
I guess that makes me wonder too, because so much of stuff that you've adapted has been about that kind of thing too. It's about compressed moments of time, be it The Beguiled or Bling Ring, or they're about these pieces of life. And I wonder if that's, as a reader, something you find yourself attracted to as well.
I guess, I don't know if there's a connection, but I love photography, which to me is just a moment, and then you have to imagine what happened before and what after. And so I love that about, I think about images like that. And for me, I don't know, it feels poetic just to get a glimpse of something and have to fill in the rest yourself, as opposed to really having a thorough complete story, whole story, just to have a little moment and then imagine the rest.
Gosh, because as you were saying that, I was thinking about the opening of Somewhere, which is almost like a piece of still photography. That car entering and then leaving the frame, and that buzzsaw-like sound, which again takes me back to Gang of Four and Sleigh Bells, and I just, I don't mean to sort of assault you with all these connections here, but that image to me, or that opening scene, really felt like a still photograph that was slightly animated, and I wondered if you thought about that kind of desolation too for that opening image.
Yeah, I mean, I love, it was definitely an exercise of like, how long can we stay on this until it's so uncomfortable, wanting to show the monotony. And I love that he leaves the frame and you wait, and the sound goes away and you wait for him to come back. And Harris Samides and I just had a lot of fun with how to shoot that. And I think because I come from a photography background, I think about, I don't think about the camera moving as much as other people do, because I think about it as being a still frame that the actors kind of come in and out of, and think about the frame like that, I guess.
Yeah, as you were talking about that, I was thinking about that scene after the opening credits of Virgin Suicides, where the girls are coming out of the house and the parents are there, and we hear that voiceover, and that's almost like a still photograph itself. And there's sort of qualities of light that you respond to in still photography too, aren't there?
Yeah, definitely. And I when I worked with Ed Lockman, who shot that, who really helped me find the way to approach the whole movie. I was showing him a lot of photographs of suburbia and Eggleston and the color and the kind of that old Playboy, 70s Playboy photography that with all the kind of flares and soft lighting. So definitely a lot of the references were from photography at that time. And also because it was about a memory, it wasn't taking place at that time. It was supposed to be a memory of these boys looking back at that time. I thought it has that sun-faded quality of old photographs when you find them in a box from the 70s.
In fact,
I feel like a memory.
I was just going to say the opening credit sequence even feels like if somebody thumbing through a box of old Kodachrome pictures, just those shots of suburbia.
Yeah, yeah, definitely trying to like piece together these memories, because it was based on the boys' memory and kind of fragments of it. They're trying to put the pieces all together.
Yeah, but the idea of somebody watching something and being distant from it, again, that's literally happening in Virgin Suicides with a commentary. But I just wonder if there were, you talk about still photography, but there were movies you saw too that did that for you, that you saw somebody sort of watching somebody big in their life in a compressed period of time.
Oh, that's a good question. I can't think off the top of my head of which films, but I don't know. I feel like the French New Wave and the Italians of that period always treated time in a different way than the movies kind of I grew up with. So there was, especially like Antonioni, there's this kind of meandering quality that I love, because it kind of puts you in a whole different, you have to go into a whole different pace to go with that story.
Yeah, there's something dreamy about that, what Antonioni does. And there's also something dreamy and poetic about the way you work and the way you take it. I mean, I think one of the reasons you seem to connect so well with Bill is that it's about patience for both of you and letting people sort of enter into it rather than forcing them along.
Yeah.
And that's definitely something that happens in your film, where you're not forcing anything.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, I like to kind of set it up and then let it not be too, hit someone over the head, but just kind of be, I don't know, let them discover it or something.
You brought up our dear friend Harris. Oh my gosh! And I was going to talk to you about, I guess, qualities of light, and I was thinking about the fact that you work so often with people that you like, with Lance and with Harris, and now with Philippe. And I wonder what your first conversation with those guys were before you started working with them.
Yeah, I always love the conversation with the cinematographer. It's something, I guess all directors love their cinematographer, because they're bringing it all to life for you, along with the actors and everybody. But that's really a fun collaboration that I really enjoy, because I love photography, and to get to show them references and look at things together and share a conversation about what I have in mind and what they think I might like and what I might be inspired by, and you always kind of set some parameters at the beginning, and then it's sort of like a game of how can you tell the story within that framework that you come up with. And I always think about the point of view of the camera, of who's telling the story. And I remember Virgin Suicides, it was always, kind of the boy's point of view from across the street. So every time you place a camera, it has to, be aware of like whose eyes we're looking through. And with Lance on Marie Antoinette, it was really important to me not to make like a period dusty kind of BBC special historical drama, just because that exists. We've seen that, and we can enjoy that. But I was really wanted it not to be that. At the time, it felt, unusual to treat it in this kind of more pop casual way, because we hadn't seen that. So that was my fear, was to do something really stiff in that time, and I wanted it to feel like, feel like they were teenagers and have some energy and life to it, and then with the clothes, to not feel like they were out of a museum storage, that they were new and they were, wearing them, and it was all alive, and you were in that time as opposed to looking back at it. And then with Harris, we talked a lot about, I was kind of burnt. Arranged Up was such a big undertaking. I was over, like, I just didn't want to make movies after that, because it was just a lot, and I was tired, and I had a baby. I just didn't want to take a break, and was kind of down on production. And even though it was fun too, but it was definitely a hard shoot. And then talking to Harris about simplicity, and that was his whole motto is keep it simple. I have that on my wall too. I have it listed.
Do you?
Oh, I have a different list from Harris, but anyway, so he says keep it simple. That was his motto. And we talked about how with Somewhere, like kind of the excitement of that was just an exercise on how minimally we can make a movie and tell a story, like with how simple shot in the most simple way, and just the most minimal style of it, and kind of and feeling, because he's getting that character's headspace, that to really take our time, because he's just bored and sitting there watching his life kind of go by, and so how to feel like that the audience, hopefully not boring them to death. But just that thing of like letting a cigarette burn, because he's just sitting there doing, just kind of, totally stuck in his life. But it was fun to work with the DP on how what your kind of framework is going to be, of what rules you're going to follow and set up for yourself to tell the story. It's always the fun part at the beginning, to set that up.
It's funny you're talking about that, because one of the things about Harris I remember is that he was basically anti-movie. Whatever you could do to not make it look like a movie, that's what he wanted to do. That's why we have these lights. Get the stuff out of here. Don't hose down the street. That's not the way people walk around. But I remember talking to him about before he started shooting, and he said, what I love about what she does is that she finds a way to make these movies so that we're voyeurs in them. And,
that's cool.
and he loved that about you. And it's one of the things that I can see in the way you work. There's a sense of us kind of watching, again, that's what it's from a distance, but not so far away that we're not emotionally involved in it. And I just wonder if there's like people like Dion Arbus or Eugene Adjei, or those people, those photographers who did that kind of thing for you.
Oh yeah, I'd never really, I totally appreciate them and admire Dion Arbus, but I didn't feel like a strong connection or think about her work. But I'm looking at my bookshelves, I always love Eggleston, who just seems to be, kind of watching the world around him. And yeah, it's true. I always want things to be connected emotionally, but not hitting people over the head, in a way, kind of sneaking up on them.
It's funny because I guess literally in this case, the new movie, she is an observer. We're watching her watch him. And I wonder what your conversations were with Rashida about trying to get this so it wasn't so obvious, because she's also figuring out who she is as she's watching him. So it's kind of a double dive off the board for her.
Yeah, I know that Rashida had to kind of dial it back, because he's saying all these outrageous things, and to not react and confront him. And I wanted her more to kind of just be taking him all in, and taking it all in throughout the story, and sort of absorbing it as she goes. And so I think for her, she had to be more in a kind of observational state, and she totally got into that mode. But it's different than a more external way, I guess.
Well, one of the things that occurred to me as I was watching it is that she's not often asked to act. She's often asked to be this person who just is saying they're offering up information, and and you could feel her affection and her dismay for this guy at the same time. Like, why am I letting him do this? Well, I guess I should, but why am I? But I guess I should. Her fascination
Yeah.
and her irritation with herself for being caught up in this, and again, that's a lot to ask of somebody. And
Yeah.
photograph it.
I thought, yeah, I thought she did that so well because you're right. It's contradicting things happening at the same time, and I feel like she conveys so much of the little expression or look with her eyes without without having to say a whole long thing. You get what she was thinking. You
I guess this is the point I should ask you to tell people what the movie is. How you came up with the idea, I guess. I mean, not the movies, but how you came up with the idea, because you said you were working on it for a while, and I guess the last time I saw you, or you, I guess it was sort of dancing around your head a little bit. You
Oh yeah,
mentioned the picture, but I guess I wonder if there are other things too that were part of this.
yeah. I was working on that script for a while, but maybe I started 4 years ago. I don't know, a while ago. I've been working on it for a couple years, and I kind of started it and stopped, and it had different versions. And I the starting point was a friend telling me the story about her husband was traveling a lot with a coworker, and she had a Playboy father, and he really instigated this whole thing where they went and spied on him. And they were like, she was like hiding in the bushes, and I thought, like, oh, I would love to see a father-daughter buddy movie. And also, the father was like this playboy giving advice about men and stuff. And I just thought, it's already finding to have. I mean, we always talk about those stories of cross-generational, exchanges and just this kind of playboy giving his grown daughter advice about men and relationships and like look, you need to see it from a man's point of view. And so that was and also thinking about conversations with my dad and men of his friends of that generation, just like the things you grow up with and how to put that conversation all in one place. And then just being in this moment of having little kids, and how do you reconnect with your creative work side and all the different roles you have to play. And so thinking about all of those things and imagining you have to kind of refine your identity and place as this new role. And so I thought, okay, that's a setting where she could be vulnerable, and that the dad could come prey on that, and and she'd be vulnerable enough to go along on this kind of crazy adventure, and them spending time together. And yeah, so at that moment, and I remember being like in my 20s and liking some guy and not understanding why, like, he was hot and cold, and my dad like having drinks with him, and like him telling me things from a man's point of view. And so it was just like that exchange that I thought was a unique kind of duo for an odd couple, that, and especially because things have changed so much, in the past 5 years, that I feel like that generation is not, they're just in another era. And then also and then living in New York and kind of wanting to capture the city that I'm living in, and those, I love those old classic places that yeah, you just hope that they'll exist for a little longer, but they're of this kind of bygone era that this Felix character is. And when they go to 21, they're really sitting at the table that Humphrey Bogart proposed to Lauren Bacall. And I remember the waiter telling me that Lauren Bacall used to come back and stand at the bar and look over at that table. And so just all those kind of romantic ideas of classic New York. And I remember coming here as a kid and kind of going to the Russian tea room, this kind of places.
Well, I mean, so often in the movies that you made, there's been a part where we realize that people who live in these places love them.
Yeah, it's true. It's fun to be in New York, and there's obviously so much spirit about New York, and especially now that we can't go out and engage with it. I hope that people enjoy in the movie. I feel like, oh, you get to go out to a restaurant in New York with Bill and Rashida, of course, but yeah, and then the challenge of and then talking to Philippe about how do you shoot a movie in New York and not make it look like a fake version of all these, famous New York movies that we grew up with. So that was challenging too. So
I love that you went to Bemelmans. I mean, that made me smile. I mean, because
oh,
that place,
yeah.
people often shoot it and it looks like a set, but you actually give us a sense of how small it is. I mean, people often tend to make it really big, and you didn't.
Oh, good. Oh, good. Yeah, it is such a small, cozy space, and it's such a iconic New York spot. I'm glad we got to film there.
I guess for the last question, I'll ask you: is part of casting Rashida in this because she has a father who's legendary in that kind of way too, and those of us who know her life can watch that baggage kind of play out?
You know, I really cast her because I mean, I knew her for years, but I did a little scene in the Christmas special with Bill, and they had a moment together, and they had such cute chemistry, and I was like, oh, I want to see something with the two of them, and I think they both have admiration and respect for each other. So they have great chemistry. But I also, when I was telling her about the story, I thought, of course, she can relate to having a big, charismatic father. But that was helpful that she can relate to that. But I think I think it's universal, the idea of, that's a girl growing up, their father is like their first, relation to men, and in relationships, it's probably pretty basic psychology that it affects, who you're drawn to as an adult. And so I hope it's something that's universal for everyone. But I did think it was great that she could, relate to having such a character.
Well, I could talk to you forever, and I'm sure it feels like I've been talking to you forever, but we
Yeah.
should wrap this up. Thank you so much for asking me to do this.
Oh, thanks, Elvis. It was really nice to see you.
Always good to see you.
Thank you for doing this.
My pleasure.
Thank you, AFI.
Thank you, AFI.